Summary. Everything is Tuberculosis, The History and Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection by John Green. Prologue. The Boy with the Goofy Smile. John Green begins with personal memory. His first meeting in 2019 with Henry Reider, tuberculosis TB patient at Laca Government Hospital in Sierra Leone. Henry, just 14 at the time, is introduced as vibrant, intelligent boy whose spirit shined despite the debilitating tuberculosis. With his thin frame, cautious walk, and brilliant smile, Henry instantly captures Green's attention and heart. This moment is the emotional cornerstone of the book, and Green uses it to frame his central argument that tuberculosis is not just disease. It's lens through which to view the world's deepest inequalities and litmus test for how much we value human life across borders. Chapter 1. What is tuberculosis, really? Green immediately dispels any romantic notions about TB, though it once carried cultural connotations of artistic sensitivity. What the 19th century called consumption, it is in reality highly infectious disease caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It spreads through the air and primarily affects the lungs, though it can invade nearly any organ system. Here Green walks the reader through the pathophysiology of TB, how it lodges in evades immune responses, and can lie dormant for decades. Latent TB infection affects an estimated 2 billion people, nearly a quarter of the world's population, though only a small percentage will develop active disease. But Green's purpose is not just scientific. He emphasizes how TB hides not only in the body but also in the shadows of society, preying on the vulnerable, the poor, the malnourished, the displaced. Chapter 2. A Plague Through Time. Tuberculosis, Green writes, is humanity's oldest companion. He cites evidence of TB in Egyptian mummies, ancient Indian texts, and Greco-Roman medical treatises, known by many names. Phthisis consumption, the White Plague, has haunted us for over 9,000 years. He describes its pervasiveness in 19th century Europe, where 1 in 7 deaths was attributed to TB. Green discusses sufferers like John Keats, Emily Bront, Anton Chekhov, and even Eleanor Roosevelt, highlighting how TB shaped art, politics, and public consciousness. Yet he contrasts this with the sanitarian movement, where the wealthy sought fresh air and breast cures in mountain retreats while the poor languished in overcrowded tenements. This chapter begins to sketch one of the book's key themes: the intimate link between TB and structural injustice. Chapter 3. Henry's story begins. Interwoven throughout the book is the evolving story of Henry Reider. Green describes Henry's background. Born in a rural village outside Freetown, Sierra Leone, Henry grew up in country still recovering from civil war and Ebola. When he developed persistent cough and began losing weight, he was misdiagnosed several times before being referred to Laca Hospital. This delay in diagnosis, Green argues, is not unusual in high-burden underserved settings. Henry's story personalizes the global statistics. 1.3 million TB deaths annually, and reminds readers that behind every number is face, story, and life worth saving. Chapter 4. The Science of Hope and Despair. In this chapter, Green covers scientific milestones in TB treatment, starting with the discovery of tuberculosis by Robert Koch in 1882. He highlights the revolutionary impact of streptomycin in the 1940s, followed by isoniazid and rifampicin, which formed the backbone of TB treatment for decades. But the triumph of antibiotics gave way to the reality of drug resistance. Green delves into the rise of MDRB, multi-drug resistant, and SDRB, extensively drug-resistant, forms which require long, toxic, and expensive treatment regimens. He introduces bedaquiline and other new medications with promise, but warns that access remains limited to many who need them. The disparity is stark. In wealthy countries, TB is mostly cured. In low-income nations, it's still death sentence. Chapter 5. Tuberculosis and the Geography of Suffering. Green broadens the scope to global health infrastructure, arguing that TB is disease not of germs, but of systems. He analyzes TB hotspots in India, the Philippines, Russia, and sub-Saharan Africa, all connected by poverty, underfunded healthcare, and environmental vulnerability. He discusses TB and HIV co-infection, especially in southern Africa, where immunocompromised patients are at exponentially higher risk. He also explores how climate change, urban crowding, and migration compound TB risks. This chapter is part exposed, part call to action, as Green demands accountability from wealthier nations and global organizations that underfund TB research, neglect treatment pipelines, and exclude TB from global media narratives. Chapter 6. The Social Death of Tuberculosis. TB doesn't just kill, it isolates. Green devotes this chapter to stigma and silence. Across many cultures, TB is associated with moral failing, uncleanliness, or even supernatural punishment. In countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nigeria, and the Philippines, TB patients, especially women, are often disowned by families, fired from jobs, or banished from communities. Henry experienced this. As he underwent treatment, some extended relatives stopped visiting. He heard neighbors whispering that he was cursed or contagious. Green's own visit to Laco was shaped by this stigma. Some patients didn't want to be seen talking to foreigner, fearing they'd be marked. Green weaves in comparisons with mental illness, another invisible disease often wrapped in shame. In both cases, secrecy becomes deadly as people delay seeking help to ostracism. Chapter 7. Sanatorium Dreams and Surveillance Realities. This chapter explores the historical response to TB in the form of sanatoriums once popular in Europe and North America. Green discusses places like Davos, Switzerland, and Saranac Lake, New York, where TB patients from wealthy families were sent to convalesce in alpine air. He contrasts this with modern-day isolation wards, especially in countries with coercive TB control. In parts of Eastern Europe and Central Asia, patients with drug-resistant TB are forcibly detained in TB prisons for failing to complete treatment. Green raises troubling ethical questions. Should public health override individual freedom? When is it justifiable to isolate someone for their own good? How do we balance compassion with containment? Chapter 8, The COVID-TB Collision. One of the book's most urgent sections deals with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on TB services. As countries locked down, TB diagnosis plummeted, clinics closed, doctors were reassigned, and patients feared visiting health facilities. In 2020 alone, TB deaths increased for the first time in over a decade. Green uses this moment to draw haunting parallels. Both diseases are stigmatized and disproportionately affect the marginalized. Yet while COVID-19 sparked an unprecedented research mobilization, TB was left behind. Still, he finds hope in the mRNA revolution. If the global scientific community can develop and deploy COVID vaccines within a year, why can't the same urgency be applied to TB? Chapter 9, The New Tools and Old Roadblocks. Green provides thorough overview of technological advances. The GenExpert MT-BRIF test, mobile digital X-ray units, and new treatment regimens like BPAL, bedaquiline plus perteminib plus linezolid for drug-resistant TB. He celebrates the scientists, doctors, and community health workers leading these innovations. But the excitement is tempered by old challenges. Corruption, funding gaps, and political apathy. Green speaks with researchers in India and health workers in Uganda who have seen remarkable recoveries, only to have their programs defunded the following year. The road to eradicating TB, he argues, isn't blocked by science, it's blocked by will. Chapter 10, Henry's Turning Point. Returning to Henry's story, Green recounts the boy's gradual recovery. After months of coughing blood, losing weight, and near-death episodes, Henry's body begins to heal. Green describes the emotional moment when Henry walks unaided around the hospital grounds for the first time in months. But the story does not end in triumph. Henry faces hard reality, reintegration into society that sees him as damaged, yet he is undeterred. He wants to become a health worker to teach others about TB and to fight the stigma that killed him. Green's friendship with Henry becomes a symbol of radical empathy, model for how listening to stories can change how we respond to crises. Epilogue. Everything is Tuberculosis. In the final pages, Green circles back to his provocative title. Everything is Tuberculosis is not medical fact, but philosophical one. TB reveals the fault lines in our civilization, where we invest, whom we protect, what suffering we ignore. Green implores readers to care, not just in principle, but in practice. He encourages donations to TB-focused charities, support for global healthcare reform, and advocacy for equitable access to treatment. The world, he argues, has the tools to end TB. We just need to choose to use them. Major themes and takeaways. 1. TB is mirror of injustice. Tuberculosis flourishes where systems fail. Its persistence in the modern world isn't failure of medicine. It's failure of global compassion and political commitment. 2. The power of storytelling. By anchoring the book in Henry's narrative, Green transforms statistics into human truths. Storytelling is not distraction from science. It's the bridge between science and action. 3. Global health solidarity. Green argues that no country is safe until every country is. Ending TB isn't just an act of charity. It's an act of justice and survival in an interconnected world. 4. Resilience and hope. Despite its heavy subject, the book is ultimately hopeful. From Henry's determination to walk again to the breakthroughs in diagnostics and treatment, Green underscores our capacity to change. Conclusion: Everything Is Tuberculosis is landmark work of narrative nonfiction. At once memoir, medical history, and social critique, it is driven by Green's characteristic empathy, wit, and moral clarity. He invites readers not just to learn about TB, but to see it and see themselves in its story. By turning the world's oldest epidemic into human-centered narrative, Green ensures we can no longer look away.